my good friend, the Reverend M. Barclay, to St. Andrews. M is known in the Austin community. Some of you are already familiar with their work. They are, as Donna mentioned, the co-founder and executive director of Enfleshed, which is a nonprofit creating and facilitating resources of spiritual nourishment for collective liberation. M is an activist and scholar and pastor and preacher. They are a deacon in the United Methodist Church. They've advocated for queer and trans inclusion in the United Methodist Church for many years, including in a formal role as the director of communications at Reconciling Ministries Network. They have worked as a hospital chaplain, a youth director, a justice associate, and a faith coordinator for reproductive justice here in Texas. They are smart and wise and caring and compassionate. They are a true gift to all of us, and I'm very glad that we get to welcome you here, Em. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And now let us hear words of scripture from the Gospel of Jesus Christ according to John. This is my commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And you are this. Instead, I call you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have learned from our heavenly parent. It was not you who chose me. It was I who chose you to go forth and bear fruit. Your fruit must endure so that whatever you ask of our heavenly parent in my name, God will give you. This command I give you, that you love one another. If you belonged to the world would love you as its own. But the reason it hates you is that you don't belong to the world, because I chose you out of the world. Ancient words from our tradition for our present day understanding. Thanks be to God.
What a delight to be here worshiping with you this morning. As a former Austinite now living in Iowa, it brings me deep joy to return to the land of the things I love the most. Breakfast tacos, queso, and the scorching heat. But even more so, I am grateful to be here worshiping with a community that I have long respected. My first time here was 2010, I believe. This congregation was hosting an evening with Reverend Janie Spar. At the time, she was facing a complaint for officiating a queer wedding, and it meant a lot to me to be here that night, even as a United Methodist. It was one small touchstone on the path that would help me to accept and celebrate my own queerness. That night, I saw a glimpse of a faith community committed more to love and to justice than to orthodoxy and church rules. A commitment still too difficult to find in the average church. Throughout seminary, where I attended Austin Presbyterian, about your ministry here, about your bold risks and your brave proclamations and your strange choices, even when it came at a cost, or other people didn't understand it, or as our text points to today, even when you were hated for it. I know that Reverend Eileen Dunn played a big part of that here. And I've been holding you all close in my heart the last few months, in both your grieving the loss of her presence among you, but also in your continuing to live out together the kind of strange faith that she lived. One that defied norms and cracked open new possibilities for love and life to thrive. She was a holy kind of strange. And so is Jem. And so is Daniel. And so are you, St. Andrews. And you have known the costs and the benefits of being called strange as a community for quite some time now. It has taken me a while to understand the holiness of strange. Just a few years ago, my own strangeness felt like a curse or a burden that I would rather hand back. When I first came out as non-binary trans, meaning neither man nor woman, I had already been out as queer for years, and adding trans just felt like too much, too isolating. Like there was a limit for a reasonable amount of strangeness that people could support. And my gender was just gonna tip me right over the edge and out of the community that I had left. I wanted to unlearn this truth about myself. At first, I felt the weight of my new strange identity every day. My strange pronouns, my strange name, my strange looks, and my strange proclamations that there are and always have been more than two genders. The stares and the threats and the words from car windows, the awkward but necessary exchanges with friends and colleagues and faith communities as I transitioned, the relational losses and the vocational questions. Not since I was a child had I felt such a longing to cast aside my strangeness and just be normal. Early on, when children, often to much embarrassment of their parents, would ask me on the sidewalks of Chicago, boy or a girl, I was always too nervous, too afraid, too embarrassed to tell them the truth that some of us are more other than either. But one day I paused, and I wondered what it might have meant to me when I was just 4 or 5 years old to have seen someone else who looked how I felt inside and gift me with the language to name it and a reason to believe that there were others strange like me. What if one of these kiddos who asked about my strangeness saw something of themselves in me, and instead of seeing me cower or hide or cringe about it, saw me light up with confidence and delight? Throughout the history of queer and trans existence, glimpses of others who seem to be strange like us have helped keep us alive in all kinds of lonely circumstances, children and adults alike. A moment, a word, a brief connection that reassures you're not the only one. Whatever kind of strange you are, it is enough to save a life, to break open a world where others can breathe easier, and to make it possible to begin shaking off generations of losing our authentic selves to rules and systems and faith claims that confine rather than set free. In the Broadway play Fun Home, the story of a young queer woman and her relationship to her gay father, there's a song that speaks beautifully and powerfully to this reality. Allison, the 10-year-old protagonist, is at a diner in the 70s when an old school butch lesbian walks in with a delivery. And Allison is captivated. She has never seen someone like this woman before, someone with whom she resonates at the deepest level, even though she doesn't yet understand why. And as the scene unfolds, this baby gay 10-year-old puts her private thoughts to song, processing out loud to what the sight of this woman is stirring in her. I'm not going to sing it. But she sings, your swagger and your bearing and the just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys, oh, your ring of keys. I thought it was supposed to be wrong, but you seem okay with being strong. It's probably conceited to say, but I think we're alike in a certain way. Do you feel my heart saying hi? In this whole luncheonette, why am I the only one who sees you're beautiful? No, I mean handsome. This moment captures stunningly what so many young queer people experience when we see for the first time someone that somewhere deep down we feel might be like us, that part of us that we were told to hide away in shame. And it's like a moment of glimpsing ourselves as free. A glimpse that breaks open possibilities for our future, for our flourishing, for all the questions we've held inside about our strangeness. What we don't see in the play, however, is the story of this butch woman. What she has faced and lost and had to overcome in order to gift this young girl with a glimpse of her own freedom. And this butch woman was certainly called strange or queer in the 70s. And the world, by and large, doesn't treat strange things kindly. That is, of course, why the word queer was and still is sometimes used like a weapon. To call someone queer was, of course, a slur for strange. So much damage has been done, shaming the strange gifts of God within us. And this strangeness is not confined to queer or trans flesh. Yes, even you who are cis and straight, you too bear the good and be hated for it, or you may have locked it away somewhere in order to belong. In you lives the potential to break open new possibilities for others strange like you. Jesus, of course, knew a thing or two about what it meant to be strange and why the world does not treat strange things well. After all, he came from a long line of strange ones, prophets and outcasts, misfits and exiled ones. He studied the history of strange ones in his faith tradition, and he embodied the lineage of sacred strangeness. And like all the others, he was hated for it, even eventually killed because of it. If you find the world hates you, remember that it hated me before you, he says. If you belong to the world would love you as its own. But the reason it hates you is that you don't belong to the world, because I chose you out of it. What is translated in English as world here is cosmos in Greek. Cosmos was not a reference to this precious earth we live upon, and it isn't a blanket statement for humanity or the beautiful things that make up our cultures. The cosmos was a way of naming the perfect order of life. Perfect, of course, according to those who benefited from it. It was all the ideas and philosophies that made social hierarchy seem natural, built in, unchangeable, or God-given. It's the everyday, ordinary stuff that makes it feel normal or inevitable to be ashamed of your body or to walk by people with no access to food or shelter or medical care, or to live in cities intentionally segregated by race and class. It's everything that tells us every day through the smallest messages that reward our loyalty that the only reason some people suffer is because they just don't follow the rules of life. Prejudice is a learned negativity toward strangeness. When people break the rules handed down to us with how they look or act or sound or eat or worship, we are taught not to like them because they're not doing it right. They're not normal. And if we fall outside the lines, we often learn to hate that part of ourselves too. To belong to the world, to the cosmos, is to take your place as a cog in the machine of everyday, ordinary power and order. After all, Jesus goes on to tell his disciples, if you played by the so-called order of things, if you cast your lot with the world and find your belonging there, there would be no hate of you. We learn the rules early on and play the game, some of us better than others. And we are called the good girls and the successful men, the civil and the rational ones, the reasonable and the normal. When we hide away our own strangeness, the world's order doesn't have to waste its energy on us. We do its dirty work for it. But each of us, all of us, God has chosen out of that world. And that does not mean we can deny our contribution to it. And that doesn't mean we have not benefited from it. But it is an awakening to the strange possibilities of something different. And Jesus says in our text today, come and follow away from that order. Whether the perfect order has called you too big or too black or too brown or too poor or too queer or too soft of a man or too strong of a woman, whether the perfect order has called your work meaningless or your body shameful or your interest uncool, come, Jesus says, and be strange with me. But it won't be easy. Those who do not belong to the world will be hated. Jesus, who made such strange choices that his own family thought they needed to save him from himself, knows that being strange is risky business. It gets people killed, fired, isolated, shamed, mocked, bullied, because connecting with the strange in someone else invites people to unhide what they have buried in themselves for far too long, and that is scary. And because it exposes alternative ways of living that don't depend on the perfect order for loving ourselves and each other in this land aching beneath the weight of our species. When we find our belonging among the strange ones instead of in the world, it breaks open possibilities of birthing a whole new kind of order built on the practices of love, not domination, invested more in strange possibilities of the unknown than the everyday, ordinary inequality. Our hope, however, only goes as far as we are willing to go together, committing to those who are strange like us and strange in ways different, refusing to abandon one another to the hate of this world, so afraid, so in need of tender and brave strange ones, just like you in this place, and all the strange ones who have gone before us, and all the strange ones to come, laying down our lives for one another, but also finding them in the process, along with joy, along with freedom, along with beauty and connection. And so may this community and each of you within it always stay strange, seeking the holy and provocative places, proclaiming your truths that set free, and shoring up beside all those who bear the heavy burden of the world's hate. It has and will continue to matter more than you could ever know. And so by the power of God, the strangest one of us all, may it be so today and always.